let's see. Let's do a quick review on what we talked about last time. Last time I introduced you to the concept of morpheme. Remember? When we talked about morpheme or we talk about words, right? We look at the smallest part of a word, right? The smallest part of a word that has a meaning, we call it a morpheme, right? A morpheme is the smallest part of the word that has a meaning, okay? And the meaning could be anything. Could be like grammatical meaning, like S, could be S, or could be ER, could be ER, or could be ING, like that, okay? It doesn't even have to be a syllable, right? S is not a syllable. S is just a sound, right? So don't confuse a morpheme and a phoneme, okay? And then we look at two types of morphemes, right? Bound and free morphemes, right? The bound morpheme cannot stand alone, and the free morpheme can stand alone as a word, okay? And last time we looked at this handout, remember the handout that you have your homework, the handout that the homework is on. We look at this one and we didn't get to finish. So we'll just go through this quickly and we'll move on to other things, okay? So we haven't finished this, so we'll finish this first and then we'll get going. So we look at, so the purpose of this exercise, practice exercises, is that I want you to be able to recognize different parts, right? And each part you can see that is recycled, right? It reappears, it recurs in many words. So, for example, convene, you have the vene here, intervene, you have the vene here, contravene, and invent. So all of them have the meaning of to come, okay? Now, the next word is morbid, mortal, immortal, post-mortem. All of them have the more part. You see? More part, more part, more part. And more means die or death, okay? So post-mortem is after death, like that. Immortal, is not, right? So immortal is not dead, like that. Mortal is dead, morbid is also dead, like very strong, as if causing death, like that. Okay. Next one, next line. Telephone, telepathy, telescope, teleport. You see the word tele, right? Tele is a Greek root. It's from Greek. It means far, far, far away. So telephone, phone is, you already know, phone is sound, right? Telephone is sound from far away, which is telephone, right? Telepathy, telescope, teleport, same thing with the meaning of tele is far, right? Next one, patriarch, patriot, expatriate, and paternal. So we have pet, pat, pat, and pat. So they all share the meaning of father. Like your country, like you're patriotic. So that's like fatherland, like that, right? Paternal is father's side. Expatriate, X is out of, so out of your country. So a person who works out of the country, you call him an expatriate, for example, okay? Next one, pedestrian, quadruped, tripod. So we have ped, pod. And this morpheme, oops, I'm sorry. This morpheme means foot. Pedestrian is people who go by foot, right? Tubaki, like that. Quadruped, 4 feet, right? Like animals. Tripod, is 3, right? 3 leg. Next one, you see, bene, 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 bene. So bene is good. From Latin root, so it means good. So whenever you see the word bene, it means good always. Okay. bene, 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 bene. Next one, manual, manufacture, manipulate, manuscript. You see the word manu, the morpheme, I'm sorry. The morpheme manu, 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 mani or manu. It means hand. So manuscript, script is to write. So manuscript is something that you write by hand. Okay, manuscript could be a book like that. Manipulate is to control. Manufacture, to make by hand. Fact is to make. So to make by hand, to produce. Manual is by hand. Manual, manually control machines like that. Okay, done by hand. Next one, you have cap, cap, cap. You see, cap is head, head. And in many cultures, the head is the most important thing. So you would want to call the head of the ship or the head of a plane like that captain, right? Because the head is the most important thing for us human beings, right? And decapitate is to take out the head, to cut out the head. Capital is the most important city like that, the major city. Okay. Contain, detain, pertain, obtain. Next line, you see the word tain. Tain is to hold. Okay. So contain, to hold together, like that. Okay. Next line, what do you see? LUC, 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 LUC. Is I'm sorry, here. Latin. From Latin, it means light. So lucid is like light like quality. So it means it's clear, like that, clear. Translucent is also clear. Elucidate, to make clear, to make you understand clearly, like that. Can you elucidate me, like that, on that issue, like that? Okay, to make clear. Lucifer, a name of a person, meaning to have light, like that. Okay, to shine like light. Next one, amoras, enamored. Enamel is to fall in love, right? So amor is always love or sarang. Okay, love. Next line. Okay, so far so good. Next line, sign, design, resign, consign. Right. Sign is to write, to sign, in other words, to write your name, like that. Next one, autograph, autocrat, autonomy, automobile. We have auto, right? Auto is self. Self meaning yourself. So autograph, graph is to write about yourself. Autocrat, to govern yourself. Autonomy, same thing. Automobile, mobile is to move, so move by itself, automobile. Next one, dorm, 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 right? Dorm is to sleep. Loku, loku, lock, lock. Last but one line, we have loku, loku, lock, lock. Okay? Loku or lock means to speak, to speak. So a person who is loquacious, meaning that he's talkative, very talkative person, good at talking, like that. Interlocutor, somebody who you talk to, your listener, your audience, interlocutor. Eloquent, the speech that's so well said, like that. Speak well, like that. Last one, scribes, scribble, transcribe, transcript. You see the word scribe or script, right? All of these means to write. So we have scribe, scribble, transcribe, and transcript. So all of them mean to write. Okay. So all of this is to show you that words can be dissect, can be cut into different pieces, and each piece has a meaning, and when you combine all of them, the new meaning should arrive. Okay? And all of these are morphemes that you should be well versed in, meaning that you should know them by heart. Okay? Because you see them a lot. Now, let's move on to the stuff that we didn't get to finish last time. This is from the last PowerPoint file, okay? So we already looked at two types of morphemes, right? Bound and free. So bound is something that cannot be by itself, right? And the free morpheme, something that can be by itself, can stand by itself, okay? Now, let's look at derivational and inflectional affixes, okay? So all of them are affixes. Affixes could be prefix, suffix, or infix, and so on, right? Remember, all of the affixes are bound morphemes, meaning that they cannot occur by themselves, okay? So, derivational first. Derivational affixes, Derivational affixes, when you add derivational affixes to words, you can derive a new word, okay, with a new meaning most of the time. So, for example, when you add able, the suffix able, the derivational suffix able to use, you change from a verb to an adjective like that. So this means that a lot of time you change this part of speech of a word from a verb to an adjective by adding that morpheme, that suffix. Use plus able, usable, right? Use is a verb like that. Or happy, adjective. When you add ness, you get happiness, which is a noun. Okay, so usually the derivational affixes, derivational morphemes will change the part of speech of a word. Sometimes not. Like unhappy, especially if it's a prefix, unhappy is still an adjective from the adjective happy. Re plus produce, reproduce is a verb, right? Still from the verb to produce, like that. Most of the time, we'll change the part of speech. A derivational affix will change the part of speech, but many times, no. Okay? The other class is what we call inflectional affixes. Inflectional affixes are of 8 types only in English, and they are grammatical. Okay, they are grammatical suffixes. So including tense suffixes like third person singular, he walks, like that, singular present tense, past tense, ed, right? So this is about tense, the first two, and the next two, ing and en. They are called aspects, like progressive, something is going on all the time, or the perfect, like he has eaten, like that. So the first two are tense related, but the next two are linguists would call aspects. I should show it on here. Aspects, I'll write it here, aspects. Aspect has to do with either progressive or perfect. If you know, like present perfect, present progressive, the perfect and the progressive are what we call aspects. Aspect meaning how you look at the action. Is it progressive, ongoing situation, or is it perfect, meaning is it like finished, completely finished, okay? So the first two are tense related. Next two are aspect related. Okay? And plural and possessive, they are marked, they are used to mark nouns, right? Plural, how many? More than one. Okay? Nouns. And possessive, you mark the noun in terms of possession, right? Who owns what? Okay? And the last two, comparative and superlative, they mark adjectives, right, in terms of comparison. ER is one step higher, and superlative is like the highest step possible. Okay? So again, the first two are tense related. The next two are aspect related. Next two are noun related. Last two are adjective related. Notice that they don't change the part of speech of whatever they are attached to. When you attach the first two, S and ED, to verbs, they are still verbs. When you attach ing and en, they are still verbs. When you attach S and apostrophe S to nouns, they are still nouns. Finally, when you attach ER and EST to adjectives, they are still adjectives. So they don't change the part of speech. But derivational suffixes, many times, a lot of times, they change the part of speech from one type V to adjective, like for example. Okay? Although in some cases they don't change, but many times they change. So to be able to separate the derivational from inflectional, you just have to recognize the inflectional suffixes, right? Because there are only 8 types. Okay? So beyond these 8 types, they are all going to be derivational. Okay? Only 8 types for inflectional suffixes. Okay? And all of them cannot stand alone. All of them, they are bound morphemes. Okay? And inflectional suffixes will come last. Okay? You can add many derivational suffixes, but the inflectional suffixes will come as the last thing always. Okay? And inflectional suffixes do not pile up, meaning that there's usually one inflectional suffix. Okay? But you can add many derivational suffixes. Okay? You can add many of these, like happily, like that. Happiness, let's see, usably. So let's see, you can make an adverb out of this, usably. So use plus able plus ly. So you can keep adding derivational suffixes. Okay? But for inflectional suffixes, inflectional affixes, you cannot add them. Okay? You cannot pile them up, you cannot stock them up. So these are the differences between the two categories. And finally, you might hear 2 more ways of categorizing morphemes, the content and the function morphemes. And I believe that I mentioned this in passing. Content morphemes are what we call the content words. So words that mean a lot, words that carry a lot of meaning. But function morphemes are morphemes that do only grammatical functions. Okay? So lexical morphemes or content morphemes, same thing. Words that carry the content of the message, for example, nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. But functional morphemes or grammatical morphemes are words that are not really important, but their function is to indicate relationship between lexical morphemes or content morphemes, same thing. Like prepositions, conjunction, and articles. So these functional morphemes or grammatical morphemes will not receive stress, remember? And they will be pronounced with schwa. Remember the weak forms, remember? Because they are not important. They just join lexical morphemes together. Okay? So they are not important. But in terms of the meaning that they carry, you can categorize morphemes into lexical or content and functional or grammatical, same thing. Now that you understand what a morpheme is and you have the ability to analyze words into different morphemes, we'll do this practice together. Okay? Let's look at number 1. So in number 1, all the words here end with ER, right? All the words here end with ER. Taller, river, shorter, farmer, either, smarter, color, and so on. So can you tell me whether, let's see, whether the ER is a morpheme or not? Remember, a morpheme must have a meaning, okay? Whether all the ERs are a morpheme or not. And second, whether all the ERs here refer to the same thing or have the same meaning, okay? So you can cut the morpheme first. So ER, 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 like that. Okay? So then we can consider the meaning of each ER, right? What it contributes to. So, in taller, the ER is a morpheme or not? Remember, this ER is an inflectional, right? We just finished that. Inflectional suffix, right? That you attach to an adjective to indicate a comparison, right? So this ER has a meaning, so it's a morpheme. So the first ER that you see in taller is a comparative morpheme. Okay. Now the ER in river. What about river? Do you see a morpheme there? It must have a meaning, right? It's not a morpheme because there's no morpheme that goes like riv and River is a river. A river is a river. It doesn't, the meaning doesn't come from riv plus So ER there is not a morpheme. So not this one, okay? Because ER there is part of that word. You cannot dissect it. It doesn't have any comparative meaning, okay, or other meanings. Third one, shorter. It is a morpheme, right? Same thing, comparative, okay? So I'll just leave it like that because it's the same. Number 4, farmer. We have farm plus So in this case, it's a morpheme. But the meaning of farmer is different from ER here, right? Farmer, here is a noun morpheme, meaning a person who, right? A person who does something. Like teacher, a person who teaches, like that. A farmer, person who does farming, like that. So it's a different morpheme, right? Different from that comparative morpheme. So we can talk about 2 different morphemes here, even though they look alike. They don't mean the same thing, and they are different morphemes, okay? And this ER, person who does X, is a derivational, right? This one is derivational. This one is inflectional. Because you have only 8 types of inflectionals, remember? And comparative is one, but this meaning is not one of them, so it's derivational. Next one, either you have a word or a part of a word that is ith. No, right? It's not I plus Either is either, just one morpheme. Okay, so either is not. It's not a word that you can separate. Okay. Smarter, you can, right? Smart and smarter and smartest. So in this case, it's the first category, comparative morpheme. Okay. Caller, a person who calls, right? A person who calls. So like the second category, person who does. So this ER, the second category. Okay. It's a derivational suffix. Painter, a person who paints. So same thing, derivational suffix, person who does. Thinker, a person who thinks? No, right? There's nothing like that, so this one is no. Sweeter? Yes, right? So same as the comparative morpheme. Other, oath and no, right? So not that one. Never, nev and no, right? Never is just one word. Originally, it's from not plus ever, but ever is already a word. You cannot separate into ev and So never is not separable. At least the ER is not separable. Teacher, a person who teaches, yes, ER has a meaning, which is a derivational suffix. Finally, cover. No, there's no morpheme that is like cov plus So this one is not. Okay? So this is how we will differentiate between morphemes. Could you do The next one, let's see, number 2. Could you do number 2? This time is en. Can you separate them into different parts and see whether they are the same or different meaning? They are of the same or different meanings. I'll give you 2 minutes. So your answers should look more or less like this. So there are some words that are not separable. The en cannot be separated from those words. For example, even. Even, no. It's not even en. Often, no. And sudden, no. Open, no. And oven, no. So only soften, soft plus n. In that case, n means to make, to make. So soften is to make soft, right? Broken, not to make broke, but it means the past participle morpheme, right? So en is past participle. So this is inflectional, this is derivational. Taken, take, took, taken, that's past participle also. Okay, so inflectional. Whiten, whiten is to make white, so it's to make, derivational. Eaten is past participle morpheme. Widen, to make wide, so derivational. Harden, derivational, to make hard. Deepen, derivational, to make deep. Okay. So it seems that in English there are 2 meanings of en: to make, derivational, and en, which is inflectional. Okay. So let's come back to the PowerPoint for today so that I can move on to another concept, a different concept. Now that you know how to recognize morphemes, and you know that some morphemes look the same, right? Some morphemes look the same, but because they have different meanings, they are not the same morphemes. Okay? Now you know what a morpheme is: free or bound, content or function, derivational, and inflectional. Now, a different concept that I want to introduce today is the concept of allomorph. Okay? You remember when we talked about phonemes, we have allophones. Now, when we talk about morphemes, we have allomorphs. Okay? So allomorphs are variants of the same morpheme, meaning that a morpheme can look minimally different, can look different, like can look similar. Right? Can look similar, but not 100% similar. And they may look a bit different in a different position, in different positions, but because they mean the same thing and because they have the same origin, then they are called the same morpheme. They're recognized as the same morpheme, even though they may look different. Allomorph sometimes will have a different pronunciation because of some sound changes, sound processes that happen. Okay? So, for example, you know that the morpheme in means not. Okay, the morpheme in. The derivational, right? Derivational prefix in is not in English. When you have these words, applicable, dependent, and violable, you have the morpheme in and it's pronounced in. Inapplicable, independent, inviolable, like that. But when it's attached to other words like regular, rational, responsible, reversible, legal, literate, logical, the in changes to or ill, like that. Okay? We call that or ill allomorphs. They are allomorphs of the same morpheme in. And They are before irregular, irrational, irresponsible, irreversible, illegal, illiterate, illogical. Guess the reason. The reason is because all these words begin with R or L. See? So the N changes to R or L depending on the following consonant sounds. This is what we already saw, right, in the previous chapter in phonology. It's called assimilation. Remember? We assimilate one consonant sound, make it like the adjacent sound, the sound next to it, for ease of pronunciation. So whenever you have R as the beginning of the next word, when you have L as the beginning of the next word, then you have N turns into or il, like that. Or it can turn into im when the next word begins with a bilabial, usually im, usually P or M. Immovable, improper, immature, impossible, immoral, impolite, like that. So they look a bit different, N, R, L, or M, depending on the following consonants. So this is what we call allomorphs of the same morpheme. Okay? Or another example is con. Con is another example. Con means together or with. You see convene. Remember the word convene, to come together. Convention, like a meeting, like that. When it's in front of so many words pronounced as k or written out as k. Collect, collide, co, written out as co. Collect, collide, collate, correct, collaborate, like that. So pronounced as k, written as co, right, with the schwa, pronounced as a schwa. Or com as in combat, compute, compare. So because the next word begins with a bilabial consonant, so you need an M, like that. Or con when you have alveolar sounds following it. Or co, pronounced co in other positions, coalesce, cohere, cohabit, coincide, especially when the next word is a vowel, right? Coalesce, cohere, cohabit, coincide, coexist, vowel or H. Okay? You will have co, but in other places you have k and com or con. So all of these, co, com, con, or co, they are allomorphs of the same morpheme, C-O-N. Okay? So this is what we saw before. Okay? Now this one is important, and I will have this on the midterm. The plural morpheme in English, we write the plural morpheme as S, you add S after dogs or cats, like that, or ES, right? S or ES, or EN as in ox, oxen, child, children. Or change the form, foot to feet, goose to geese, like that. So you don't see the morpheme like written out, but there's a vowel change, right? Foot to feet, U to E, like that. Still, feet has two morphemes, foot plus plural, even though you don't see it, but you hear it, right? The allomorphs, when you pronounce the allomorphs, are like S, C, or is, or us. Okay, only three allomorphs. S as in cats, parks, cops, or wives. Z as in dogs, rules, fades, dabs, cars, or wives. And the rest you have is or us, as in churches, roses, hedges, slashes, garages, ceases, like that. The reason is, do I have that on the next slide? Yes. The reason is that you have to look at the last sound of the word. Cats, for example, the last sound is T, you see? Park, the last sound is K. Cop, the last sound is P. Wives, the last sound is F, right? These are all voiceless sounds. So the S that you add, the plural morpheme that you add to it must be voiceless too, assimilation. Voiceless, voiceless. So is the first rule. The morpheme S will be pronounced as S when the front sound is voiceless, right? When S occurs after a voiceless sound, like that. On the other hand, if the front sound is a voice sound like dogs, G is a voice sound. Rule, L, liquid sound is voice. Fades, D sound is a voice stop. Dabs, B sound is a voice stop. Okay? If the preceding consonant sound is voice, S cannot stay S, but it will change to a Z to match the voicing. Is the second rule. S changes to Z voice when it's after the voice sound, except sibilants and affricates, we will talk about in a minute. Okay? Finally, you pronounce it as is or us when the sound, the preceding sound is a sibilant or an affricate. A sibilant may be a new term for you. Sibilant is like fricative sound. A lot of fricative sounds in the alveolar and palatal alveolar areas. So sh, sh, s, like that. Okay? Sibilant, like the snake hissing. Okay? Like the sound of snake hissing. Okay? So all these are sibilants, like S or Z or the hook, like that, or number 3. All of those sounds are sibilants. So I think I should write it out. So sounds like S, Z, the hook, and then that sound. This is sibilant. So these are all sibilant sounds. Plus affricates like T hook, plus and this, right? If you have these sounds, then you have to pronounce it as is or us. Churches, garages, like that. The reason is also phonological. These sounds are hard to pronounce by themselves, okay? If you don't have a vowel before it, it's hard to add an S. For example, the word church. Church, like that. If you add S or Z, how would you pronounce it? Church, like that. Church, difficult. So you have to add a vowel in there. And the best candidate is either the schwa or I, right? Because these are light vowels. So you add a schwa to make it a syllable, churches, like that, easier to pronounce. Okay? So S, which change to us or is if it's after sibilant or affricates. Okay? And in other cases, the plural morpheme might involve vowel change or no change as allomorphs. Okay? And the rules here are the same for the present tense morphemes because you add S, or the possessive morpheme, you add apostrophe S. But in pronunciation, you go by all these rules, same thing. Okay? And this is also important, the past tense morpheme in English. The past tense morpheme in English, in writing, you add D or ED, okay? But in pronunciation, you have at least 3 allomorphs. The T allomorph, pronounce it as a T, pronounce it as a D, or it or ud, depending on what sound comes before it. When you have a T, as in kicked, pushed, stopped, right? The sound before it is voiceless. So when it's voiceless, you have a T. But when it's voiced, you have a D. Begged, right? Loved, vowed, like that, okay? Finally, if the sound before it is T or D, it's hard to pronounce without an insertion of a vowel. So you insert a vowel in there, schwa or I, tit, wanted. You cannot pronounce it, notice, wanted, like that. So you have to insert a vowel, which is insertion, right? That we talked about last time. So all the rules are here. The D will change to a T, right? When it occurs after a voiceless sound. Kicked, stopped, like that. Kissed, like that. But the D will remain a D if it follows a voice sound. Loved, you loved me, like that. Or D will change to it or ert after T or D, because you have to insert a vowel, a light vowel in there for ease of pronunciation. And some verbs have a zero allomorph, meaning that you don't see the change. Hit, hit, hit. I was hit, he has hit me, for example. You don't see the change there. But due to, depending on the context, there might be an allomorph in there that you don't recognize. Some verbs that you don't see. Some verbs have a vowel change, like eat, ate, like that. Ate has a vowel change, but it has the past tense morpheme in there. Okay? When we talk about allomorphs, you cannot forget phonology, okay? Because we have different forms of the same morpheme just because of what we call phonological changes, right? When two sounds are next to each other, two sounds can affect each other, right? And that would give rise to different allomorphs. For example, the plural form that you see. The plural form in writing is S, always in writing. S or ES, right? In writing, maybe 98% of the time. But in pronunciation, it's either S, Z, or is, right, for most nouns. That's because the sound before it affects the plural morpheme. If the sound before it is voiceless, then it has to be an S. If the sound before it is voiced, then it's just a Z. If the sound before it is a sibilant or an affricate, then it has to be is or us. And this is what we call the process of assimilation, right? Because it depends on what type of sound you have before that plural morpheme. So you have different allomorphs of S or Z. But for the last one, is or us, that's the process of insertion, right? Insertion. So this is insertion. So phonological changes such as assimilation or insertion happened, okay? Because of these things happened, you have different allomorphs. So another example is when you have the word possible, okay? And you want to make an opposite term out of it. Typically, we add in, right, to make it an opposite term. Can we just say impossible? No, because it's hard to pronounce, right? And the natural phonological process that happens here is assimilation. So people pronounce it as impossible. And that is reflected in writing as well, in addition to the sound. That's reflected in writing as well, impossible, instead of impossible. But the original morpheme is in, and it changes to im because of the following consonant, which is the bilabial sound. Okay? So im and in, they are allomorphs of the same morpheme, so we call that. Okay? Now, what I would like to do before we look at the last part of morphology is we'll do this practice. So I have you predict. Allomorphs are just like allophones. You can predict where they occur. Allomorphs are like allophones. You can predict where they occur. So this is a handout that I gave out. This is on page 3, the last page, I think, of that handout. We'll come back to do page 2 later today, or I will assign it as homework. Now, we'll look at the prefix an, which is derivation of prefix, right? An, okay? Now, I give you the data here, 3 columns with the phonetic transcriptions and then the words in writing. So 3 columns altogether. And in each column, you have the prefix written out as the way that people would pronounce them. So uncomfortable is pronounced like uncomfortable, like that. Pleasant, this is without that morpheme un, okay, pleasant. But is there unpleasant here? Here, unpleasant, how do we pronounce unpleasant? Just unpleasant. You see, unpleasant, right? Pleasant, unpleasant, like that. Uncomfortable, where's comfortable? Comfortable is here, comfortable, right? So what you would do is, can you divide the words here into different morphemes? No, just morpheme un, okay? Just focus on morpheme un. And see how many allomorphs of un you have, okay? First, list the allomorphs of the prefix. First, do that. How many different types of allomorphs you see here in this data, in this set of data? Then, where does the each allomorph occur? Remember, when in the case of, let me write it here. In the case of, for example, in, we see that in changed to im before p, like this, right? In changes to im before this is a bilabial sound. Now, do you see the same kind of thing happens in this set of data or not? Okay, can you tell me where we see for example, okay, where we can see other allomorphs? Okay, I will ask you. So I'll give you about, let's see, 5 minutes. People who can answer my questions will get cookies. So first, list out all the allomorphs that you see, right? You don't have to even think because all the data here is given to you. How many allomorphs are there? And where do you see each allomorph? Again, phonological processes will make allomorphs happen, okay? Will cause the change in the morpheme so that you have different allomorphs. Okay, so who would like to answer the first question? List all the allomorphs of the prefix un, derivational prefix un. So, what allomorphs do you see? Anyone would like to try? What allomorphs do you see? Yes. With the tail, right? M. Un. Anything else? 3? Let's see. What about which one is it? Here. Unnatural. Unnatural, and where's the word natural? Here. Natural and unnatural. Can you compare them? Unnatural and natural. Just the schwa, right? Just the schwa. You see, natural has n to start with, but here there's only one n. N has to be from natural, right? N of the natural cannot be just deleted, right? So only the schwa, right? In this case, so the last allomorph that might be hard to spot is just the schwa. Does anyone would like to guess where you find each allomorph? Just give me any, you can choose any allomorph and give me the answer. We have just 4. We have up to 4. So we can have 4 people. So anyone would like to try one of these allomorph? Where do you find each allomorph? Just list out the sound after. So anyone would like to try? Where do you find N with a tail? Where do you find M? Where do you find N? Where do you find Just give me the sound after it. Anyone would like to try? Where do we find N with a tail. Look at all these examples. Where do we find after it? What do we find after it? Yes. So for example, unbelievable, right? After is a B sound. What else? Unpleasant, P, right? So that seems to be only two examples, right? Unbelievable, unpleasant, and they are both, as you said, bilabial. Okay, so you'll find this allomorph after a bilabial sound. Okay, an N or a schwa, just schwa. Where do we find them? You can list out the consonants, and then we can think about the category together. So anyone else would like to try? Where do we find N with a tail? Where do we find N? And where do we find only the schwa? Anyone else? You, Hansel? Yes. You mean this one? N with a tail before K, and as in uncomfortable, and before, where's that? Ungracious. Here, right, before G. And what kind of sound are they? What kind of sound of K and G are they? Velar sound. And this makes sense, right? Because N with a tail is also velar, right? Is deep in your throat, right? So velar. So it seems that for these two allomorphs is the process of assimilation again, right? Assimilation. Where do we find the whichever you choose, En or En, right? Not En, schwa and N. Unfashionable, so F. Anything else? Unsung, S. Unintelligent, so E, right? Vowel E. And what about F, S? There should be one more. Assuming, you see? Assuming. Assuming is a schwa, right? It's a schwa. Assuming, unassuming. So we find four. We find four. After schwa in. F, S, E, and schwa. Okay? So the last one is, where should I write it? It's just a schwa. Where do we find a schwa? Just a schwa. I already told you, right? Natural and unnatural. So it's before N. Okay? So it seems that you see that schwa N has the highest distribution, right? Meaning that it can occur before so many things, F, S, or even vowels, right? But the schwa has a more limited distribution, only before N, based on this data set. And M, only two sounds, two bilabial sounds. N with a tail, only two velar sounds. So the schwa N seems to have the most basic form, right? Seems to be the most basic form, and it seems to have the highest distribution. So we can say that the most basic form is schwa N. And then it will change to M, schwa M, or schwa with a tail, or just schwa, depending on the sound after it, okay? Depending on the sound after it. So again, this has to do with phonological processes, right? Assimilation or this one deletion, because the two ends are the same. Why do we pronounce both, right? Just one is enough. And then the schwa n is the most basic. So it's here. Okay. Oh, you have that. So, and now number four. Can you guess whether or not you will find these words? Uncertain, when we pronounce it, uncertain, unfathomable, ungarnished, unappetizing, unpalatable. Do we find them? Do we find any of these in real life? Based on the rules that we see here, right? In the first one, uncertain, is that possible? Yes or no? You look at the sound here, it's S, right? According to our rule, S occurs after un, right? So this is not likely to be possible. It should be a bilabial sound after it, okay? So that's not possible. What about unfathomable, meaning that you cannot reach, is too deep, that you cannot reach, you cannot feel the bottom of it, unfathomable, you cannot understand like that. So can you have an N here, unfathomable? Yes or no, based on our rules here? Yes, right, because the sound is F, so you can have an M. So this is possible. Ungarnished, the dish is ungarnished like that. Yes, right? Because we have a vela, so N with a tail is the correct or possible pronunciation. Unappetizing, do we pronounce it as in past speech, appetizing? The following sound is a vowel. So why do we find a vowel? It should be un, right? Un. So that's not likely. Unappetizing. Last one, unpalatable, meaning that it's not delicious or you cannot stand it. Okay? It's bland like that. The taste is bland. So unpalatable, not likely, because P is a bilabial, so it should be like that. Okay? Now, so far so good. Let's look at the second page of this handout. The second page is more difficult. We'll focus on number 4. We'll focus on number 4 now. Number 4. En, again, En. Now, this is a lot more difficult than that one, okay? So, En, we saw earlier today, right? En can be attached to some adjectives, and the En means to make, right? So, blacken is to make black. So, can you blacken the circle like that when you answer questions on multiple choice format, right? Blacken to make black, like that. Broaden to make broad, like that. So En means to make. Stiffen to make it stiff, like that. Ripen to make it ripe, like that. So En can be attached to many adjectives here. Deafen, tighten, soften, loosen. But to some adjectives, longen, long to make long, you cannot do that. You have to say lengthen, like that. Or you cannot do slowen, you cannot do thinnen, make it thin, right? Slimmen, make it slim, you cannot do that. So where do we find En? Why is En possible in some words and not possible in some other words, right? First, can you list out the sound before N? So that might tell us, that might give us a clue. That might tell us a clue, that might give us a clue. So list out the sound before N, all the sounds before N, okay? And we might see the pattern. Okay, this is what we should find. Everybody should find the same thing. So in order of appearance, blacken, the sound before N is K, right? Deafen, the sound before N is F. Broaden, the sound before N is D. Tighten, T. Stiffen, F. Soften, T. Soften, F, not T. We say soften, not soften. So F, F. And then ripen is the P. Loosen is the S, and so on, right? Now, for the ones that you cannot have or people don't say, thinnen, N, nearen, R, right? Highen is I, right? Is I, not H, because we don't say highen. We say highen, right? High, I, vowel. Long is N with the tail, okay? We don't say longer, right? Long, N with the tail, not G. Slowen, just O, which is a vowel. Holyen, Y. Slimmen, M. Narrowen, O, narrow, O is the last sound. Noblem, from the word noble, O, L, okay? So we agree on this, right? The sound before N. So all of these is okay to plus N. But plus N, this is not okay, like that. So can we group these sounds here so that we might be able to tell the reason why? In the top category where N is allowed, you see we have K, F, D, T, F, P, and S. What are they? They are stops, right? You see stops. K and D and T, they are stop. And S, F, they are fricative. So it seems that fricative plus stop, okay, right? With an N, with the morpheme N. So it seems that for fricative and stop, the EN can be attached to those words, okay, or morpheme. And you can see that in the category below where EN is not allowed, there's no stop, there's no fricative. But they are all R, L, Y. They are glide. Remember? Glide. Glide or liquid. And there are some vowels as well. So glide, liquid, and vowels, EN is not okay. Okay? So it seems that English-speaking people would add EN to words that end with, to adjectives that end with a fricative or a stop, but they wouldn't attach the EN to words that end with a glide, with a liquid, or with a vowel. Okay? So it seems to be a phonological reason, because you see that no fricative and stop would appear here. Okay? Now, last one that we'll practice together, which is the B question. Can you think of a reason why ED may attach to some nouns but not to others, as shown below? As in brown-haired, like brown-haired person with the D, ED. Left-handed person, kind-hearted person, narrow-minded person, low-spirited person, strong-headed person, like that. Strong-headed is stubborn, right? But you wouldn't say brown-coated person, heavy purse, meaning a person whose purse is heavy, or long-skirted, one-childed person, two-catted person, silly-headed person. So this one is difficult. It doesn't have to do with sound, this one. This one has to do with the quality of all of these things before. If you group these words, okay? Coat, child, purse, cat, hat, and skirt. These are things that are external, okay? External to a person, meaning that things that you can throw away, things that you can detach from a person, right? Coat is not like attached to you. It's not internal. It's an external thing, okay? Child is an external person. Purse, also external. Cat, also external. Skirt, also external. Hat, also external. They are all like items that are external to you. Items that are not part of you, in other words, not inherent part of you. But when you talk about hair, hands, heart, mind, spirit, and head, they are inalienable part of you, meaning they are inherent, they are natural part of you, right? Yes, hair can fall, you can take your heart out, but they are so different from purse or cat or hat or skirt, right? So you can say that you can add ed to inalienable nouns or quality, meaning it's in you, it's part of you, it's part of the self, okay? Inalienable, meaning you cannot make it out of you, cannot get it out of you like that. It's intrinsic, it's inherent, it's inside, okay? It's part of a person. But coat or child or cat or skirt, these are all external. Detachable, like that. Detachable, like that. Separatable, you can say separatable, like that. Okay, so for this one, I'll give it as your part of your homework that I will send out by email today. So let me explain this. So I have, in this question, I have 7 categories, okay, of derivational morphemes. So when you add the morpheme to the stem, when you add the suffix to the stem, sometimes when you add it to a noun, it stays as a noun. But sometimes when you add it to the stem, it changes the part of speech from verb to noun, like that. From A is either adjective or adverb to noun, like that, okay? D-dog, N is a noun or adjective or adverb, changes to a verb, like that. And then noun or adjective changes to adverb, like that. So there are 7 categories here. And I give you all the words here, okay, all the data here. What I would like you to do is, can you identify what type of category a word should be put in? Say broaden, for example, it has 2 morphemes, right? Broad plus N, okay? Broad plus N. So which category should it be in? Broaden as a word is a verb, right? To broaden something. Can you broaden the area, like that? Can you broaden? So it's a verb, right? So it's a verb. It could be this. It could be, well, only that, right? Only number D. And broad itself, the original morpheme is an adjective. So you categorize it as number C, like that, okay? Or participant, the second one, participant. The last morpheme is ant, okay? Ant, participant. What other words have the ant? Inhabitant, like that, same thing. So you can say 2 participants, 3 participants, inhabitant, inhabitants. So it's a noun. Now, ant is a derivational suffix that creates a noun. So it could be A, B, C, A, B, or C, because the product is a noun, right? Now you have to think about the origin. So participants come from participate plus ent, right? Participant is a person who participates, right? So participate is a verb, right? The original is a verb. So it would be category B, like that. So participant is from participate plus ent. Participate, which is a verb, plus ent, and that makes it into a noun, like that. So it's the B category, okay? So you do the same to every word here. I could show you another example. What should I do? Which one? Trial. Trial. Trial is a noun, right? A trial, two trials, for example, is a noun. So, like when you go to trial in the court, right? In the courtroom, for example, trial is a noun. So it could be either C, B, or A, because that's the final product, is a noun. Now the original morpheme before you change it into a noun, AL is a noun ending, okay? The original morpheme is try plus O, right? Verb to try plus O. So we have trial, like that. So this is a verb plus O. You change it into a noun, okay? So it's category B, okay? So you might, for this exercise, if you don't know the category, you might have to look it up in the dictionary, but you should be pretty familiar with all these words. Like with, th is a noun suffix. Warmth, th is a noun suffix, like that, okay? So I'll give this as part of your homework that I will send out today. So this is how you go about doing it, okay? And we are out of time today. So we will come back and finish this off next time, typology, and we will get started on syntax. And the week after next week, we'll do a review for your midterm, okay? So we'll come back and pick it up from here, typology, and I'll send out the morphology. I'm sorry, I'll send out the phonology homework, okay? So before you leave, don't forget to turn in your homework from last time, okay?